I think a lot of people need to be a lot more focused on the bond market right now because it is really dictating where things are going. We're going to be returning to homes as a primary residence instead of just purely a speculative commodity. That makes sense. But to buy the way that things have been going, where everybody's just trying to outpace inflation and speculate on the market, and even as crazy as day trading real estate on assignment, I think that we're moving away from that. And that's a good thing. It's just there's going to be pain in that transition.
Welcome to the Tom Storey Show with Steve Karrasch and Tom Storey, where we discuss everything real estate or whatever else is on our minds.
Welcome back to the Tom Storey Show. This week's guest is Adam Nadler from Vision Real Estate and Royal LePage, your community. Adam, I think we've known each other 8 years now, 9 years. I don't know. It's been a while. I actually remember very well. I didn't know who you were. You randomly called me one day and you're like, let's go out for lunch. We went to Yorkdale. We met at like a Joey's at Yorkdale or something. That was the first time we ever met. And then we had our first real experience together in Portugal. So we won't talk about that on the podcast, but I'm excited to have you here. For people that don't know, Adam's one of the good ones. Really good real estate agent. We'll talk about specifics, but welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Thanks. Yeah, no, it's been a wild ride. Holy shit. This market's pretty nuts. And I love your guys' show and watching you guys and learning from you, because you guys are definitely wizards and pull some crazy rabbits out of hats.
Thanks, man. Well, I got to do your podcast recently, and Steve actually gave me a compliment. He said I actually sounded smart on your show, which he's never said to me before. So
that's because you've never sounded smart on this show before. You saved it for somebody else's show. I was like, what's going on here?
Well, talking about someone that probably talks too much and sounds a little smart and gets smacked around for it, Steve, there's something wrong with your face. And before you tell the audience what happened to you, I just want to say that what you did, I don't have the guts to do. I play hockey every Tuesday night, and there's a little shoving match once in a while, but I'm not getting smacked around like that. And we know the market's bad, and it could have been a seller that punched you square in the eye. But I think you should let the audience know, what did you do for the first time? Because you should actually be very proud of this, that in your early 40s, you're like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to wrestle people that are larger than me, and it could hurt.
I thought you were going to say ask for a price reduction.
It's just as difficult, yeah.
Yeah, man. This is our first recording after I entered my first jiu-jitsu match. It was a learning experience. It was, and unless you do it, I don't think I can properly give it justice. But yeah, it was nerves. It was. I was actually pretty happy. So I didn't win, obviously, as you can tell by my face. But they say if you don't win, you learn. And I learned a lot that day. But yeah, it was interesting. My bright note is the fella that beat me, I had a couple of matches against, went into overtime, and you in a submission only event, so it's tap out or nothing.
Die.
Yeah, when it goes into overtime, we went to, so it's fastest escape. So whoever can get out of a certain hold the fastest, and that's how he beat me. But then he went on for the rest of the day and submitted everybody else in regular time. So I'll take that as a win. That guy won 2 gold medals. I won a silver medal in a division of 2 people. So I'm pretty happy with that. And yeah, I don't know. I cannot explain, I've never done something like that before, and maybe my face says I shouldn't, but man, it was a good time.
I like that thought process that he beat everybody else worse than he beat you, just like the Leafs took Florida to Game 7 and Florida beat every other team, so we're technically the second best team, right?
Yeah,
Edmonton,
yeah, absolutely. Sorry. If they just could have won that Game 7, the Leafs would have a cup right now.
If you just didn't get fastest escaped, you could have gone to the finals, right?
Yeah, and he beat me by 4 seconds too in the last one. So I was like, all right. But
well,
yeah,
Adam, you should have seen the other guy. As soon as Steve sent me photos, like I would have ran out of the room right away.
Yeah. Actually, that was funny. So when you're there, you have some guys from the gym that are also there. And after the matches, I was like, man, I walked over to one of the guys, and I was just like, I've never felt somebody as strong as that guy that I just went up against. Like I've never felt someone grab my wrist and been like, oh man, this is going to be bad. And they were all kind of laughing. They were like, did you see the size of that guy? Like they were laughing. Now, the good thing is, thankfully, I felt good. Like my technique was there. And he actually didn't have a lot of technique. He muscled through. So I felt like I don't know. I'll take it as a win. It was a hell of a good learning experience. Any
learning experiences from that you can take to the real estate market right now?
Yeah, if you get beat up, you can get back up again and try again the next day if you want. You might want to take a couple days off before you go out on your next battle or for a listing appointment or a price adjustment. But you know what I will say in a slightly positive manner, not that I try to do that on this show. If you physically go and do something like that's that hard, you come out of it and you're like, so what now? I got to phone someone and tell them they're asking too much for their house. Like it seems like such a menial task afterwards, because I had some stone cold Steve Austin guy in front of me, like trying to choke me with my own shirt. Right. Like that's the reality.
Sometimes you need something to put things in perspective, right?
Yep.
All the stuff we're complaining about are look at what's going on in the world right now. We're not going to get into that, but like we should be so thankful every morning we wake up that our problems are what we say they are, right?
You know what I will never do again is I'll never watch a UFC and wonder why in the second and third round a fighter is like gassed or like dude, I couldn't believe it afterwards, right? I couldn't believe it. So it was
well, good. We're proud of you, and but let's get focused on real estate here. So Adam, you track the market like me and Steve track the market. I know you're really involved. You're ground level in the market. You know, as we're heading in here to the midst of the summer, where typically the market slows down, but it never really sped up at all this year. What are you seeing right now in your business?
Yeah, so I'm focused a lot more in York region, which is kind of the GTA, just outside of Toronto, but still within the general horseshoe area. And I think a lot of people need to be a lot more focused on the bond market right now overall, because it is really dictating where things are going for at least Toronto and Vancouver, where we have had generally greater volatility. Not the same thing in the rest of Canada, where you see in the Maritimes, the prairie provinces are all just kind of chugging along because they haven't had such volatility. They haven't had such, investor kind of activity happening at such a mass scale like we did. And so I think watching the bond market and understanding the bond market is going to be appearing a lot more in headlines, I think, in the coming months, just as we see that really affecting interest rates, in particular fixed rates, with yields going up. And when we look at the overall landscape, the federal government is going to be increasing spending, and they're going to have a tough time trying to sell bonds in order to do that. And when they have a tough time selling bonds and the bond market, bonds start to go down in price, yields go up, right, in order to entice investors to purchase the bonds. And that forces rates up. And so that's going to overall have a massive effect on our market in Toronto and Vancouver. Now, my market in particular has been a little bit more insulated than yours, Tom, because you're much more in the downtown core, where there was a lot more investor activity, especially with condos. And we have a lot less investors comparatively, still have a lot of investors, but comparatively a lot less in York region. So I think overall we're going to be returning, which I think is a good thing, to homes as a primary residence instead of just purely a speculative commodity. And I think that's probably what we're heading into. And I think that's a good thing. It's a healthy thing for the economy. And that's kind of what I'm telling my clients is like, you should be looking at real estate for what it is. If you have a real need, if you have a true real need, like you're buying because you've got your kid in a school district and they have all their friends there, and you want the stability of knowing that they're going to stick around there, and you've got your home base, you can afford it, you've got, stable income, that makes sense. That's where you should be buying. But to buy the way that things have been going in Toronto and Vancouver over COVID, where everybody's just trying to basically outpace inflation and speculate on the market, and even as crazy as day trading real estate on assignment and all these kinds of crazy stuff that we saw, I think that we're moving away from that, and that's a good thing. It's just there's going to be pain in that transition. At least that's what I'm seeing.
There was people saying that during that period of time that pre-construction condos were just legalized gambling, and you're not the house. And I thought that was a pretty interesting way of looking at it, right? That's kind of what a lot of people were doing, right? Whatever we look at. For anyone that's listening, Adam, because the way that you just broke down the bond market, I think was really, really intelligent. It's the bond market will then impact the fixed rate mortgages, right? So ideally, knowing what on a macro level about, Canada's going to be spending money. Maybe those bond yields will go up. The 5-year government bond yield is directly correlated to the 5-year fixed rate. So, fixed rates are right now, like 4.2 or something, or 4.3, maybe up to 4.5, depending on what the product is. So do you think over the next 6 months to a year that fixed rates might actually start jumping back up again based on everything that you're seeing?
Yeah, it's a huge possibility that we do see that, because overall, when you watch our bond market, it's very similar to, in the States, but they have a massive advantage of being the reserve currency of the world. So they can they can do things like that and print money with a lot more flexibility than we can. And so when we have government spending that keeps outpacing the previous year by wide margins, we end up in at a macro level what's called fiscal dominance. And when we enter into fiscal dominance, we're essentially just doing what we can to cover the interest on our debt. And that's kind of like when you're issuing new bonds to pay out the interest on the old bonds that you sold before, you get into a situation where you're kind of like paying down a credit card using a credit card.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what we're in. And that's going to continue happening. And it will push inflation up, because we're going to continue to see monetary debasement as a result, right? So that's kind of where we're headed. And so I do think that it will be going up in the long term.
So do you think if this pushes inflation up, and let's say then the Bank of Canada watches that and goes like, okay, maybe we do need to cut a few more times, because right now the delta between the fixed rate and the variable rate is still fairly close. They're kind of the same as of us recording this. So do you think what's realistic to happen is that maybe the fixed rate actually pushes up again, but the variable rate might be pushing down, and the gap that we used to see in a typical marketplace may start to appear again, versus, variable was way higher for several years, then it's kind of on par right now based on what you're seeing?
That'll be determined mostly by the Fed.
Hey, real estate agents, I'm going to ask you a very simple question. Are you proud of your current website? If there's any hesitation in your answer, what I want you to do is go to realtyninja.com/Tom. They provide amazing websites for the real estate industry at an affordable cost. Steve has been using them for over a decade. realtyninja.com/Tom.
So if the Fed lowers rates, which right now they're being super hawkish and they're not lowering rates for the foreseeable future, we might get, the Fed cut once or twice by the end of this year, but even that's kind of up in the air right now. That'll give the Bank of Canada more room to change the overnight rate, because if we have too big of a delta between the overnight rate in Canada and the Fed rate, it basically puts us at a massive disadvantage for trade with the States, which we already are at. And that delta will basically start to tank the dollar and really hurt our overall trade with the entire global economy. And so we're already kind of maxed out on our delta between the Fed rate and the overnight rate. And so I think the Bank of Canada is a little bit stuck where they can't continue to do this and they know that. And so they've got, a couple rate cuts, maybe. And it's a big maybe up in the air right now. And if you look at their website, which I would highly encourage everybody who's listening to really go on the Bank of Canada's website and look at what they're posting, read the reports that they're coming out with. It's very interesting. And yeah, it's like a lot of mumbo jumbo, but like, go and take it, put it into Chat GPT, right? Like use HARPA and ask it to explain it to you in simple words. And you can start to get the picture of what's going on. And what the Bank of Canada is actually communicating is that they're kind of stuck. And so they've agreed to do some, bond purchasing and to fund the federal government, but they can only do that for so long. So it'll be basically what happens over the next little while with the Fed. That's going to be very, very interesting. And I would also say, as a byproduct of, hey, let's watch the Fed, we also need to be watching the Bank of Japan, which is kind of like a bit of a side tangent, but it's really, really relevant. Is that the carry trade between Japan and the U.S. is starting to unwind a bit. And for those who don't know what that is, basically because we have all these different currencies all competing for dominance, and the U.S. dollar currently is sitting in a dominant position, what you get is traders in Wall Street and all other markets that will arbitrage the difference between currencies. And Japan has been a country that has done what's called yield curve control for, the past 20 years. And so they've held interest rates remarkably low, in fact, negative for many years. And what traders would then do is they would go, well, if rates are so low over there, but so high in the States comparatively, why don't I just borrow the yen and use that to purchase US Treasuries and arbitrage the difference, right? Because US Treasuries are guaranteed, right? The yield is there. And so that's what they've been doing. But now that inflation is running way too hot in Japan, the Bank of Japan is now forced to raise rates slowly. We actually saw this unraveling almost tank the entire market. I think it was 8 months ago. Sorry, not 6 months ago. It was about a year ago now. It was last summer, I believe. Yeah, so it was about a year ago. And so that carry trade is still currently unwinding. And so watching the Fed, seeing what the Bank of Canada is posting on their site, and watching the Bank of Japan, all of those things are going to affect our market in a big, big way.
You know what I think is like, because Adam, you just did such a good job in explaining that to people, and myself included, that don't track those type of things as much. And I just think, like, imagine like a couple that's trying to buy their first house and they're like writing notes in this episode. They're like, okay, so we're going to go look at what Bank of Canada said. Then we're going to watch what the Fed's doing. And then Bank of Japan, that's going to impact. I just think it's like there's so much going on. And all of this that I'm hearing is telling me annoyingly that Steve may have timed his fixed rate again, because he times it perfectly every time. And it's very frustrating to me. So congrats, Steve.
Yeah, well, hey, that's why you shouldn't be playing these 3-year things. The element that you mentioned, Adam, that I'm most concerned about is the deficit that we're going to be putting up. If I had to guess, I'm going to say it's going to be 120 billion, and it's going to be 120 billion for every year from now on, because we got to pay for NATO, and we got to pay for pipelines that won't happen, and we got to pay for all this stuff. I think where my big concern is we had we voted this government in now, whether or not you think we did or didn't or whatever. We've got this government that's going to spend like this. And then the conversations I'm having with folks, that I'm like, don't you think this is a problem? Like, don't you think because if I ran my household like this, it would go belly up very, very quickly.
Yes.
But don't you think it's a problem that we're going to be spending this much? Like, Justin Trudeau got ousted on a $40 billion deficit. Now we're probably going to go 2 to 3 times that at least. Mm-hmm. And their argument, and I will say this is mostly folks 60 plus, their argument to me is, well, don't you think we should be spending more? And I'm like, well, don't you think we should be spending the NATO money and all this other stuff that we're spending? And I'm just like, listen, I don't know how that ends up good in the future. Spending even more, but I mean that's
Isn't that
the
Carney's
playbook.
book though?
That
That's
is
his playbook.
Carney's book is outspend your bad economy, right? So I don't know how it's all. I'm way too stupid. Tom, when he's hosting this show, is too stupid, but not when he's on your show to understand all of this. But I mean, I do think it is going to go through. I think we have another 3 to 5 years of very tough times, and also inevitably, I think we're going to come out of it on the other side because everything is cyclical. Because they may drop interest rates. Tom, I don't actually think they're going to drop interest rates much anymore. I think they're going to hold.
I don't think it will even matter if they do. So
why not?
If the Bank of Canada goes from 2.75 down to 2.25 or 2% by the end of the year, it's still going to fall in that zone where it shouldn't have any impact, positive or negative, on the overall economy. Like you guys were both on the call yesterday, right? When Rich was going over that graph in terms of, it's like anywhere, the neutral rate right now they're saying is between 2.25 and 3.25. So we're at 2.75 as of recording this. And effectively, if it's over that, it will hurt the economy, right? And if it's under that, it can stimulate the economy. So whether they go to 2.25, I don't think that really changes.
But isn't the economy way worse than we think it is? So at what point do we need to stimulate versus at what point do we need to fight the inflation?
But the stimulating of the economy would have to get the overnight rate under 2 probably.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they're not going to do. I mean, I don't think they're going to do that. I've been wrong the whole time, but I don't know. Adam, what are your thoughts on that?
What's the Bank of Canada playbook though? It's usually wait too long to do the right thing.
Yeah, I think that it's an impossible scenario for them to be in, and by design. Like you can't have a central planning committee centrally plan the price of capital and get it correct. It's not possible. So, I don't think that, although I'm a huge skeptic of Carney, I'm not a big fan of his at all. And I think his book, for anyone who hasn't read Values, is exactly what you said. It's outspend your problems and try to make it somebody else's problem later down the road. It's essentially kicking the can down the road until we're done our term, essentially. I'm not a big fan of his. However, I don't think that this is necessarily a red team or blue team issue that can be solved by one or another. I think that if you look structurally at it, we're in kind of a debt spiral. And I don't think either party can really solve that, not without a major push to do something that would be completely politically unpalatable. And so I don't foresee that happening. And so when I say that, I don't think that this is something that the Bank of Canada can solve. I don't think it's something that any central planning authority can solve. Like when you have any economy, right, we know that a free market system will be, in essence, more efficient than any centrally planned economy, right? We know that, right? That's pure just computational math, right? So if you take any system and you apply a distributed computational system versus a centralized computational system, the distributed computational system will always outperform the centrally computed system. So, like for example, you have a dozen computers running the same problem as one computer, right? That's essentially the idea. And so that's what an economy is like all of us are essentially a computer within an economy that are figuring out our own equations and measuring them against each other. And so the most important price of anything in the economy is the very price of capital. It's the medium at which we all trade. And so when you have a central planning authority doing that, it's not going to be efficient. And so you can't have like a dozen guys sit in a boardroom going over numbers, which are all politicized, by the way, like CPI and all these other, it's all bullshit, right? And so they go over these numbers and go, what are we going to do? Well, what's going to be palatable, right? What can we justify? And if you really listen to what they say, right? It sounds like gobbledygook, but really take a moment and listen to what they say. Really take their articles, plug it into ChatGPT, be like, dumb it down to me. Like make it so that a 6-year-old can understand this. And you'll quickly get the feeling that these guys have no idea what the fuck they're doing. And they never will.
Yeah.
They never will, right? It's not possible. And so
no, I think they know what they're doing. I think they're manipulating the situation as best as they possibly can to get the desired outcome that they want. But it doesn't mean that what they're doing is going to end you up in a better spot, right? What they're doing is doing the thing that's going to keep them in power. It's going to stop them from being ousted in power. Whatever their goal is what they're trying to do. What they're not trying to do, though, is they're not trying to solve for how do we run a balanced budget? How do we, that's not even being tried to be solved for the longest time. Not since Harper has it been even. I mean, it wasn't even something in the debate. Nobody was like, "Hey, do you think maybe we should stop spending ourselves into oblivion?" And everybody's like, "Nah, don't worry about that. We'll just do some more credit cards. It's fine. Sell some more bonds. We're good." And I think, unfortunately, our society has now gone there. I was just listening to, I've been loving Theo Vaughn's podcast lately. And he interviewed Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Mm-hmm.
And Arnold Schwarzenegger was like, I was living in Austria. And I looked at America and I went, wait a minute. They're telling me in America that the government's going to get off my back and I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going. Right. And I was just like, and now we've got such a thing where everybody's like, well, what are you going to cut? Cut it all. Cut all of it. But we don't want to cut it because we need the program that came in last year for dentistry for 4 French kids, right? For some reason we need to spend that. Do you guys know anybody getting free dental care now? I don't know anybody. I'm sure that's probably a $9 billion a year program. No.
Was that seniors though?
It was nobody.
Was it not supposed to be seniors that didn't have coverage? Is that what it was?
It was supposed to be seniors and poor kids and the French people and everybody else that's on a list that, is not actually contributing any tax dollars, right? It's all this crap. And it's just we need another thing. Stop. We need to stop this. And the only way to fix, I think, where we're at, and I don't think we ever would have got to this point where housing is so unaffordable, is if the government got out of the way. But for some reason now we need Big Daddy to come in and fix it all. And Big Daddy's only worried about being Big Daddy longer. They're not worried about fixing it all.
You see that on TikTok? People are calling Carney Daddy online. That is just weird. I'm not even joking.
Cringe.
I'm not even
What
joking.
is it? What is
I'm gonna
it? I'm
gonna
this.
take
I'm
you.
on TikTok.
I'm going to take you off path here for a second. I'm going to loop back around. Okay. Yeah. Well, kind of. You said Arnold was on Theo Vaughn's podcast. Arnold's son was also on the new season of White Lotus season 3.
Yeah.
And this is where I promise I'll bring this around. Okay. In that season, the creator of the show basically said everybody gets paid the same amount, whether you're a big character, a small character, your age, your experience. We don't care. You're all coming. You're doing this. You're all getting paid the same amount of money. And the dad of one of the families, the actor's name is Jason Isaacs. He was in Harry Potter, by the way. He was Malfoy's dad. He had a wig on back in the day. Here's where I'm going with this, okay? They asked him what he thought about this. And this was his quote. Because you think he's a good actor. He's made a lot of money. And why would he care if he gets paid $40,000 an episode like everybody else? And he said, what I've done rather immaturely is expand my outgoings to match my incomings. And I thought this was a very well phrased quote where he's basically saying, my lifestyle whenever I made money, my lifestyle just caught right beside it. That's what he's saying. So he's saying listen, I didn't care. I would have liked more money though, because I've had a good career as an actor, but I've kind of just been right there with my lifestyle. To bring this around, we are not just matching our incomings with our outgoings. Mm-hmm. We are far superior. Our outgoings are way, way higher than our incomings. And that's what we're doing as a country.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have the luxury of doing that as Canada. You can do that if you're the States a little bit more, but we can't.
As a country, think about it. We are we're not taking our 39% of our income and putting it towards housing. We're taking 150% of our income every single year and trying to pay down our mortgage, right? Like it doesn't work that way. It's crazy. I think the world has gone insane with this whole thing about the government taking care of you. And as a result, this is what we're going to get. So the good news is, what I think will happen is it will get even more expensive to buy real estate. So
Who's
if you
that
already
good
own
news
real
for?
estate,
If you
the
own
people
it.
that already own real estate, the boomers that
Yes.
think it's a good idea to run a $120 billion a year deficit. That's who it's good for, because guess what? They only got 30 years left, so they don't really care. Right?
Yes.
But it's your kids and my kids that we got to worry about here. Like that's the reality of the situation, right? But we're going to spend ourselves into who knows where.
Yeah, this is just to kind of like put it in perspective, I think, with numbers is, I think a good number to look at is our debt to GDP ratio, which is now over 100%. Just to put that into perspective, like we are over 100% on total debt to GDP as a ratio. That's crazy. That's like, you're really riding the clutch on that, right? And I think, Steve, you're absolutely right. Like the government parentalism has kind of seeped into the Canadian zeitgeist, and it is now just here to stay, right? People are really kind of relying on Daddy Carney, which is so cringe, by the way. I just when you said it, I was like, oh.
Hey, I'm not
God.
posting it, but I seen it online.
Yeah, I think that's a really big problem, and people really need to understand what that means. Is that there's a quote from Thomas Sowell, I think, where in regards to economics, where he said that there are no solutions, there are only trade-offs, and we really need to understand that as a society.
Mm-hmm.
So
there's a Jamaican saying, "No problems, only situations." I wanted to ask you, talking about government intervention, everything they've done, at least like housing wise, recently has been how to help first people that don't own real estate enter the market. And whether that's the changes on the insurance cap, the length of mortgage, the HST relief on new properties, we can go down the list of everything they've done, right? There's now a call, and this is coming from the Missing Middle podcast, and they do a really good job. They got a show here on YouTube, and I saw a CTV article about this, and they're basically saying, instead of focusing all your efforts on trying to help the first-time home buyers, why don't we actually look at seniors and giving seniors, and wait, Steve, until you lose your mind, let me finish my thought, giving seniors that have the 4-bedroom house, give them an initiative and also give them the tax relief on buying new homes for downsizing seniors, because it gets them out of their, 4-bedroom massive house with 3 empty bedrooms that can then be sold. And it also, what they're going to be downsizing to, because in this scenario, we're talking about HST relief, which would be buying a new built property anyways, it would stimulate the builders to actually build products that are larger floor plans that seniors want to downsize to. So should we be helping the seniors get out of their homes to help builders build new stuff people actually want to then open up inventory for families instead of talking about condos all day long? What do you think about that? Maybe Adam, let's start with you.
Oh man, it's a big can of worms. I think when you open up, like, what can government do to help? And just kind of like to dovetail this with what Steve said before is, I'm a firm believer in get the fuck out of the way. That's what you can do to help. And I remember, Tom, you did a video a while ago on the new liberal housing plan that was done. I think it was a 2 years ago. They announced their new housing plan, which they always have a new housing strategy because it's always a mess and it's never their fault. It's always someone else. Anyways, you mentioned that the one thing that you did like about their housing plan, you critiqued most of it, and then you said the one thing I really do like is the first time buyer savings plan.
the first home savings account. Yeah, because I think it's actually helpful.
Right, because that account is actually not taxing them. It's what it's doing is it's the government just getting out of the way. That's what it's doing, and it's taking the tax burden and off of the consumer so that they can actually afford housing. That's what I think they can do, and that's what I think they should be doing. Is just getting out of the way.
You know when the boomer's going to click in here, Tom? The boomer's going to the boomer's going to figure out what's going on as soon as that home equity tax comes in. Because when they get a federal property tax, that's all that is, right? If they get a federal property tax for $15,000 per year,
you think it's going to be before you sell? You have to pay that.
It's going to be annually.
Tax? You think that's how they're going to do it? Well,
that's what they're talking about. That's what's been floated. It is an annual tax to a percentage
unrealized gains
on homes tax assessed valued over $1 million.
Okay, so
can I tell you that was I did a video on this. It was my best performing video on YouTube. I got over 40,000 views on it, and it was because Trudeau went out west around your neck of the woods, Steve.
Yeah, that professor in UBC. Yeah.
That fucking moron. This guy, okay, is such a piece of work. It's a think tank called Generational Fairness, I think, is what they're called. And the Liberals are real cozy with them. And they basically have floated ideas like this and many others that are just absolutely absurd. They're ridiculous, all in the name of generational fairness. But it doesn't make any sense. You can't tax your way into cheaper housing. It doesn't work like that.
You know what I think we should do for generational fairness? We should be able to suck the life energy out of young people and put it in old people. Is that generationally fair? Like, you guys have all the energy, right? So we're going to suck that out of you, literally take the blood out of your system and pump it into these old folks so they feel better. Generational fairness is the biggest load of crap. Do you know why do you know why old people have so much money? Because they got a lot more years to get the money.
Well, yeah. And interest rates were low for about 15 of the last 20 years, and their house values skyrocketed.
That has nothing to do with it.
That has a portion to do with it.
The number one determiner of wealth in the world
is age.
Not. Yes. Thank you for spoiling my rant. It's age. Okay. It's not the country where you were born. It's not the color of your skin. It's
what's
not
the second one? Assets owned.
Who cares? It's the older people have the money because they've had the longest amount of time to gather the money. That's how it works. You just have more years. You know what? When you start a video game, Tom, do you start at the end boss with all of the guns? No. You start on level 1. And is it unfair that I'm not at the last level? Well, generational fairness says it's unfair that I don't start like this is this is a better analogy than I thought it was going to be. Think about that. How fun are the games if everybody starts at the last boss with all the guns? The game's not fun anymore. Everybody hates it's their annoying. Life. Yeah, you're over it in 5 minutes. Nobody cares. You don't have to try hard anything. You go back and sit on the couch. You dye your hair blue, and you complain about everything. Right? Like that's what. There's nothing hard is being done. If you don't do hard things, your life sucks. If you get punched in the face in jiu-jitsu, your life also sucks. But at least at the end of the day, you come out of there going, holy crap, I tried something. I know whether or not I want or don't want to do that again. I figured out if it was difficult, and I took responsibility for myself. Can you just imagine if I walked in there, I just walked in and just went, everybody gets a gold medal, right? Like that's what we're doing. We're giving gold medals to everybody.
You'd feel good for about a minute, and then you'd be like, wait, I didn't earn this. This means nothing.
Let me tell you a story, actually. So my daughter entered. The reason I entered this tournament is because I told my daughter if she did one, I'd do it.
Did they watch you get beat up?
One wasn't there, but the other one was. Yeah.
Do you have video footage, by the way? If you have video footage, I will put it in the next podcast to open the show, if you'll allow it.
I don't know if I'm allowed to do that or not, but maybe.
Okay.
anyway, so anyway, my daughter ended up getting put in a class where everybody was a year older than her, a weight class higher than her, and a belt higher than her. So she was 3 times. So she got, I couldn't believe the performance she put on, but she didn't win. So there was 3 other kids in her class. For every division, there's 3 medals, right? So she didn't win a medal. Well, her stupid dad did because there's only 2 guys in the division. Okay. So I had to go stand up there.
How did you feel with the silver medal around your neck?
You know what? I was so exhausted, and the guy I went against was actually a really nice guy. There's a picture of us kind of hugging almost at the top because, this is craziness. I was like, this was a great experience. So I went up and I got the thing and I posed for the stupid thing. I came off the podium and I handed it to my daughter and I said, I want to let you know I'm really proud of you today. Can you wear this for me? Right? And she looks at it and goes, Dad, I didn't win this. It's yours.
Dad, neither did you.
Right? Yeah. Well, I lost it.
What's that man doing to Daddy? Why is he sitting on him like that?
Right? Yeah. So, she knows now that it's up to her to get stuff done because she went out there and got her ass kicked on a mat at 8 years old. Right? So now she knows what that is. And let me give you another story about this. As far as participation ribbons goes, there's another kid from the gym. And he showed up and his competitor didn't show up for his weight class. Didn't even come. And so the organizers of the event walk up to him and go,
win by default.
Get on that podium. Here's your gold medal.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I didn't really win this. Right. And I was like, no, man, that's not the way. So I actually know, kind of know the dad as well and kind of talking to him. And I was like, no, man, you won that because you showed up. You showed up. The other kid, whether or not his parents told him he didn't have to come today or he was too scared to come or whatever it was, that kid showed up today and he didn't have to roll to get that medal. And he might have lost if he did, but he showed up. And I told him, I actually pulled the kid aside and I was like, just remember this. When school's over and you have to go to work, most of the winners just show up every day. This is a very, to be a winner, you pretty much have to get out of bed, take your dump, go to work, grab a coffee, and sit behind a desk. You actually don't have to do that much more after that. And then you can have a very nice life. And that's what it's all about. And we have a society now where we think we should have free houses. Housing as a human right is the stupidest, no, I've heard stupider, but it's pretty stupid comment. It's not a human right. To sit inside is something that you earn. Otherwise, you're outside. In the bush, in the homelessness, or whatever you got going on. We have to teach our society this, and we're not teaching our society this.
If you need insurance, you need to go where I go, squareone.ca. At squareone.ca, you can get a quote done in just a matter of minutes. If you're a tenant, landlord, or a homeowner and you need a policy, go to squareone.ca, or better yet, go to squareone.ca/The Tom Storey Show and save $20. That's squareone.ca/The Tom Storey Show for your discount on home insurance right now.
I don't even know where to go from here. That was one of your best rants. Honestly, that was really good.
I just schooled you. Now you know how my parenting.
I don't disagree with anything you said.
Yeah, I'm daddy on this show. I'm daddy on this show, and this is how I parent my children right now.
Mic drop.
But that's it. That's it, man. And that's what it's all about.
Did you guys see? I haven't seen Gary Vee stuff in a long time. I used to watch his content, and I haven't in a long time. But I saw there was one that came up on my Instagram, and it was amazing. Steve, you would have died laughing. It was like he was answering this question like he does on all of his shows, Adam, and the question was, "Hey Gary, my company's moving to a new location for tax reasons, like they're moving somewhere, a different state, and they basically said this to us: you can keep your job and work from home, but you will not be up for any promotions in the future. But you can keep your job and work from home, or you can move with us, and you can obviously still keep your job." And you could get a promotion if you come physically to the office. And she's like, I've worked here for 7 years and I just don't know what to do. And he lost his mind. He was like, I hope they fire you. They literally just said, like, they're moving. They've told you they're not firing you. You have the choice. They're being so nice to you. You know how hard it is to run a business? And it was a really, really good rant. You guys should look it up. I think you'd enjoy the video. But it was just like, it was a wake up. It was like, what are we all complaining about? Your company that's been good to you has given you this really nice option saying you can work from home, but you're not going to get any more money. But if you come, we'll give you more opportunity. They didn't fire you. They didn't tell you to leave. They gave you this great, and we're complaining about these things that aren't perfect for how we have them in our mind. So
it's unfair that they're asking me to go back to my job, Tom. Come on, that's crazy
kind of thing. Okay, here's where I want to take this next. Adam, over the last 15 years, what has been the best return on any investment strategy? If I had $1 15 years ago and I put it into something, what has been the best return?
Bitcoin by far.
Okay.
It's not even close.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
by far.
Like, yeah, it's not even a conversation.
No.
So
there has been nothing that has ever in history outperformed what Bitcoin has done. Bitcoin in the last 15 years, which is its entire inception, since its inception, has gone from a $0 market cap to a $2 trillion market cap. Name me one other thing that went from 0 to 2 trillion in market cap in 15 years. It doesn't exist.
Right.
There is none. It's like there's no even second best. It's just only Bitcoin. If you had done nothing else but just bought Bitcoin, you'd be filthy, filthy rich.
So why do so many very, very smart investors, economists, completely dismiss it still to this day?
Well, I'd say they're coming around.
Yeah,
I mean, look at BlackRock, look at Larry Fink. They're all now jumping on the train. Look at what Michael Saylor has done. Michael Saylor is quickly becoming the Michael Jordan of Wall Street with unprecedented performance. Like, we've never seen anything like what he's done with Strategy, formerly MicroStrategy, right? He took their stocks. Oh my God, I don't know. He took their stock price from like $14 a share in 2020 to like, what's it at now? Like $414, something insane like that, right? In 5 years. And so in the Bitcoin community, what they say is that Bitcoin is on a need to know basis. So for example, if you're Warren Buffett, it's very easy to call Bitcoin rat poison because you've been very successful in this fiat system that has been working to your benefit. Why would you ever need to consider a disruptor to that system? You're winning, right? But if you're any one of the 2 billion people in the world who are unbanked and who cannot participate in the US stock market and cannot participate in the gains of the Mag 7 over the last 15 years, who are facing rampant corruption and inflation, well then, yeah, Bitcoin is something that you need to know about, right? And it has been a savior for those people and for people all around the world, right? Because Bitcoin is, a lot of people like to look at it and go, well, it doesn't do anything. And then other people liken it to gold. And you know, it starts to become this conversation where you're hearing people talking about something that they don't really understand. And all it takes is a bit of research, a bit of homework, read a couple books on it, really start to understand it, that you realize that, oh no, it's providing tremendous value. Right? Like, what other way can you transport $100 billion across the world at the speed of light on a Saturday at 9 p.m.? There is no other way, right? It's amazing.
Do you think though that because of like, so in your circumstance, if you very much believe in it, that means that you think, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so tell me if I'm wrong, but you think it will continue to gain value over the next 10 years from now?
If we're using fiat as a measuring stick, then it will forever gain value because fiat is forever losing value.
So for something that's going to continuously, if we believe the value will continue to go up, and what's it at right now? It's over 100 still? I don't even, where's it at now?
Yeah.
Okay. If you believe it's going to be 200 in 10 years, why would you ever use it as a currency to buy something if you believe the future value could go up so high? Like, you look back at some of those things where, like, there was an old $1 million listing episode where they offered, like, Sirhan's client like 8 Bitcoin at the time, and they basically told him to F off on the phone. And then you look at some of the guys that got paid in Bitcoin in the NFL and things like that. It's like, that's a great decision. Now, the timing worked out, or maybe for some people it was a terrible decision, depending on the timing. But because of the volatility, good or bad, do you want to actually use it to trade? To use it as a currency? Do you get my question?
Yes. Yeah, I understand it completely. So it goes back to kind of what Steve was saying and what you were saying before with your input being greater than your output, right? Basic budgeting. If you had lived your entire existence since Bitcoin existed now completely on a Bitcoin standard, and what I mean by completely a Bitcoin standard is that you're taking every single penny that you earn, and either you're earning it directly in Bitcoin or you're buying Bitcoin with it. And then whenever you spend whatever you need to spend, but your budgeting is so that you're taking in more than you're having going out.
Sure.
You're way ahead. Like by a mile, by a country mile.
So
right?
not
So
as concerned if you're totally fully in it. Yeah, sometimes you'll use it to purchase something, but long term, you're still way ahead.
Yeah, so like if you were to go on a site, I would encourage everybody to go in like I think it's called Priced in Bitcoin 21. And what it does is it uses the measuring stick of Bitcoin instead of fiat, because in fiat, everything's getting more expensive perpetually, always, forever, right? So when you ask me, do I believe it's going up? It's, if we're measuring in dollars, of course it is. It's going to go up forever because fiat's always going down. So if you go and live your life on and the reason why I'm bringing this up, I'm getting like so theoretical about this, is because I started in the Bitcoin space back in 2015. Okay. So really long time ago. And this was before I was a realtor. And I had a business with a business partner where we would broker Bitcoin. It was a really interesting business, but back then it was the Wild West. It was wrought with fraud and matchstick men, just,
the dark web. Yeah.
Yeah. It was really sketchy. And so, and at the time, my brother-in-law was a Crown prosecutor. And he was, we were getting into trouble and stuff like that, just with fraud and, being defrauded essentially. And then he was like, you continue this, eventually something bad's going to happen. You should stop. And so I sold my half of the business to my former business partner for Bitcoin, right? But then he continued. He's ended up becoming a multi-millionaire, right? And he lives his life on a Bitcoin standard completely, and has been for the last 10 years. Okay. And so I actually do have some like real life context towards this because I see it with him. And you know what he tells me? He actually, I helped him buy a condo for himself in downtown Toronto.
Did he buy with Bitcoin?
He had to sell Bitcoin to buy. Right. And so you know what he tells me?
Seller should have taken the Bitcoin.
He goes, he calls, first of all, he calls his condo coin. And his phrase to me is, dude, condo coin fucking sucks. That's what he says. He's like, condo coin sucks. If I had just continued renting and just continued living my life on a Bitcoin standard, I would be way, way richer right now and still have just as much housing as I needed. So if you go on that site, Price in Bitcoin 21, you'll see what housing is. Housing is down. Like, to guys like this, everything's getting cheaper constantly. So you spend on what you need to, just like anything that's deflating. It just doesn't mean that you don't buy it. You just buy what you need. So like, for example, technology is getting forever deflating, right? Every new iPhone that comes out, every new phone over the last 10 years is deflationary in some sense that it's either better, so you're getting more value for your money, you're getting better bang for your buck, or it's getting cheaper. One of the two, right? TVs, phones, whatever technology you can think of.
TVs are wildly cheap, eh? You can get like a 70-inch TV for like $500 on Amazon these days. I don't know how good they are, but those used to be 10
years ago?
I don't, a lot, tons of money.
Right. And so do you not buy a TV? No, you buy TV when things are deflating, you still buy. You're more productive. Things are getting more cheaper all the time.
Right. Steve, you got any thoughts on Bitcoin?
I don't understand it. I'm too stupid for it. My wife dabbles here and there, but I think most people are in the spot where they can't understand it, don't understand it, don't know how to use it. And I love the confidence you have in it, but at the same time, something changes and we don't know what that thing is. There could be a whole lot of wealth that evaporates. It could be something like the effect of whatever the next better version of a certain coin is, right? Bitcoin is probably mostly what it is because it was first to market comparative to a lot of the other ones. And that's my worry for it, is does it get exchanged out for something else down the road? Maybe you're smart enough if you're in that space to change the coin at the right time or whatever it happened to be. But I think so many people just don't deal with it or understand it. And then there is also the risk, right? Like, I don't know how to put it in a hard wallet and put it under my pillow. I have no idea how any of that stuff works. And until that becomes very commonplace, I'm just, I don't know. It's being used as a store of wealth, and I don't think it should be used as a store of wealth. It should be used as a currency, right? For the things that you're talking about, for those people that do need to transfer some sort of wealth to, over a border in a country with extreme poverty, and this one thing could help them, or they could get the money out of the country from a tyrannical government or whatever, right? But I don't know. I don't get it. I know it's going up because people want to buy it, but is this 10-year run, the tulips, right? Like, is that what it is? Because is it a fascination, or does it actually have a use? I think that's probably the biggest thing. What is the actual use rather than the hype around it? Yeah,
I think that there's been a lot written on that, and it's been well studied now to understand why it's Bitcoin that is the leader in all of this, and all the other coins are essentially just, on the internet, they're commonly called shit coins. Basically, anything other than Bitcoin is a shit coin. And the reason why they call it that is because Bitcoin is the only decentralized, open source, digital asset, commodity, whatever you want to call it, that doesn't have an issuer. So it's similar to gold in that sense, that it has a stock to flow ratio that is stable and predictable with finite supply that is proven and cannot be altered. Whereas all these other coins may come and, start to say that they can bring more value in this way or that way, but ultimately are at the hands of some human somewhere and can be corrupted. And so what everybody's looking for right now, just like with central banking, is everybody's looking for, what can I trust? And the one thing that we know we can't trust is humans. And another thing that's really interesting is that the things that we can trust humans for are your predictable characteristics, like number one, greed. We can always rely on humans to get greedy. And so we can always rely on whoever's closest to the money printer to crank it in their direction, with people who are closest to it getting the money first. And that's what we're seeing. But Bitcoin has the same rules for everybody all the time. These other coins don't.
Why can't another coin be made like that, though? If it was made once, it could be made again.
With no issuer. Bitcoin doesn't have an issuer.
That's the part that I don't understand, and we don't have enough time, but we still don't even know who made Bitcoin. That's still a thing that's not out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like
he's
that.
like
That to
dead.
me is like
That's-
crazy. Okay.
yeah, it's pretty wild. But that's if you were just talking like this is a real estate podcast. If you have a real need for real estate, you should buy real estate. But if we're just talking about making money and everybody's just looking to make money, then it doesn't make sense to do anything other than Bitcoin, just historically speaking. And I think what you're talking about with price volatility is, I think that over the next 5 years, markets will simply start to understand the difference between risk and volatility. Is that people love volatility when it's upward. People hate risk all the time. There's never a point in time where people like risk. So I hate third-party custodian risk. That's why I hold my own private keys in cold storage, just like you said, right? A lot of people don't know how to do that. It's going to get easier. It's going to get more accessible, just like any network effect, just like the telephone, whatever it is.
And
right?
Adam,
But-
where are they located? What's the address?
I don't even know. You have to pull a QR code or something.
Let me ask you guys this. I got two things I want to wrap this on, just to be respectful of your time, Adam. One of the things that we see most commonly in our YouTube comments is, I'm not buying a house until home prices are 4x my income, like they should be. That's how the market should work. Steve, you're not. I get where you're going to go with this, but I want to just set this up. And I actually did some research and came prepared with some information today that I want you guys to tell me if I'm wrong or right here. Okay.
I will tell you if you're wrong, and I will tell you you are wrong, and I have done no preparing, just so we know where we're coming from.
Thank you. Okay, so why did it used to be this way? Why was it in the 80s, 90s, or maybe very early 2000s that this was the metric that we would use? So I did some research on this. The banks used to lend on mortgages closer to 3x your income. Now they're 4 to 4.5 to 5, depending on what timing we looked at. So that would just be 1, right? Mortgage rates were not 2 to 4% for many at all from the 80s to the 2000s, right? That just wasn't a thing. Most people were living on single income households, not dual income households. And homes then, and Adam, we had Rich on last week. He was talking about even like the 89 crash. No one was buying homes as investments. It was buying homes to live in, but the market still crashed. Totally different than what we're seeing today. And then you fast forward to, okay, that's why it was a thing. And that was the standard maybe looked at, versus today. Banks lend at more than 3 times income. It's 4 to 4.5. Used to be closer to 5 at different points in time. We had crazy low interest rates really from 2008 to 2022. So that saw crazy growth. Most households are 2-income households. Then you add in investor demand, and then we can finally bring up the big thing we always talk about, which is there a supply crisis or not? I don't know, but there was some level of supply crisis for a while where we had supply constraints because of zoning, and then FOMO kicked in as well. So that was my little why I believe that's never going to happen again, even if home prices drop. The 4x the income is just not a thing anymore. It's never going to come back. In Toronto.
Okay. In Toronto and Vancouver, thank you.
That's where I should preface all of this. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
So
Income's not going to...
If you're a oil worker in Alberta somewhere, and you actually live, say you go out to camps, but you live in Edmonton.
Probably pretty close to 4x.
What are you making? I'm assuming oil workers these days are making 150 grand, most of them, probably more. And if they're still doing an in and out type of work, they're going to Edmonton and they're buying a very, 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 very nice house for $500,000. Or outside of Edmonton, let's call it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, they're making 200 grand, some of them, and that's one of them working. Maybe their wife works as well. Not to say that all oil workers are men, but maybe. I'm just saying, there are very affordable places if you want to live there.
Okay, so I should preface this. The areas that you want to buy a house in that the most amount of Canadians want to buy a house in will probably never get back to using that 1 times 4.
I don't think so.
Or income
I
times
mean,
4. Sorry.
also, so at the height of the pandemic, though, it was 7. If you could put 20% down, it was 7 times income because it was 1.5% interest rates.
Yeah, it got crazy for a bit.
Yeah, it was 7 times income you could borrow, and then when it went down to 5, we all thought it was crazy.
But that's mortgage. I'm talking about just the price of the house versus your income.
Okay, so that's a different thing. So then, why is it there? Well, it's accumulated wealth over time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody freaks out about Vancouver real estate, but when you think about the immigration, particularly mostly from China, into Vancouver, and China's one-child policy and the funneling that does, right? So think about this for 3 generations, Tom. Think about if your grandparents were single kids and they got all their inheritance, right? From their 2 parents. And then your mom was was an only child. And so was your dad. And they got now all of their inheritance from all of their parents. And now you're the only child. And now you have all of that wealth funneling down generationally. Traditionally in Canada, has gone the other way. But when you have this funneling down and all this wealth comes to one person, and then they pick up and they move to Vancouver and they have all this money, now it's not a big deal. Now they buy a house and it goes up in value, and they now have given a whole bunch of their equity to somebody else who now also has a ton of equity. So they can afford to pay more as they move out into the valley or retire into a cottage or whatever it's going to be. So wealth accumulation over time is the real reason that prices are so high. And you're not going to end up like, I look at Vancouver and I'm blown away. Like I was talking to somebody the other day that was looking for a $2.3 million home in Vancouver.
And what that actually gets you.
It's teardown level on a 4,000 square foot lot in the city of Vancouver, in not the nice parts of Vancouver. Right? So it really depends what you're looking at, but it's wealth accumulation over time. And I think we're actually going to go through something similar now because we have people that are having less and less kids. Right? Like I have many aunts and uncles. My kids, I guess, also do. They're going to have my kids are going to have less aunts and uncles. Right? Because there's just less kids. So we're going to start seeing that funneling. It's never going to happen. And then the value is going to decrease in the dollars, which was what Adam was talking about. And the asset price will go up because the dollar is going to continually devalue forever and ever and ever and ever. Because that's what our government likes to do.
Yeah, asset prices will continually go up. And to Tom, what you were saying, I agree. I don't think those ratios are ever going to come down. I think they're only going to continue to increase, just like we see amortizations continually increase, right? What are they talking about now? Before it was like a big change going from 20 to 25. It was a big change going from 25 to 30. Everyone's like, oh my God, a 30-year AM, right? Now what are we talking about? Now it's already talking about 35, right? It'll go to 40.
Give me just a lifetime AM. Give me an 85-year AM. 100 years.
I should probably try and dig it up. I watched a video on YouTube about how people lived in North America from when, the Spanish came basically, or I think it was maybe from the founding of the United States. Maybe it was the 1700s until now. It was crazy. Like how most people lived, and they were like showing pictures of like some of the first, photographs of these settlers and different stuff. And like, it was pretty common that you would come to a town and you would get to sleep inside. You would maybe rent whatever the version of a hotel, but it was basically an 8x8 room, and they had bunk beds built and, straw bunk beds and everything. And these people were living 30 people in that room. Right. So, and it just broke it down, and like living never actually got good for the average person until the 1950s. Right? Well, a little bit in the 40s, maybe a little bit in the 30s, but like living was mostly outside in your bare feet, right? For a lot of people. So, I mean, I think we got it pretty good.
Well, that's a bit of a hot take by Steve, and here's how I want to wrap this show up. I went onto the internet, this beautiful thing that we have here, and I found what are the 10 hottest takes about Canadian real estate. I'm going to quickly read them out, and both of you just have to say yes or no. There's no, oh, well, maybe this. Like, you're going to force to make an answer. Okay, ready? Number one, the Canadian dream is dead. Owning a home is now only for the rich or the lucky.
No.
The government doesn't want affordable housing. They want inflated asset prices to endlessly tax everyone.
Yes.
No.
Foreign buyers were never the real problem. Blaming them was just a distraction.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Rent control has killed new housing supply. You're not protecting tenants. You're pushing them into bidding wars.
Correct.
Yes.
This one I said earlier in the episode, but pre-construction condos were just legalized gambling, and you're not the house.
No.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Real estate agents are part of the problem, hyping FOMO while prices spiral out of control.
No, I don't think so.
I'm gonna say
We're
no
price
on that one.
agnostic. We're price agnostic, man. We don't care. We're on the transaction side.
The most amount of money I ever made in a single year in real estate or deals and transactions and on the team and everything was when house prices were half.
There you go. Your parents'
Sorry for giving it context. I'm not allowed to give it context.
Yeah, no context. Your parents' advice about real estate does not apply anymore.
Yes.
Yes, generally. Yeah.
People who bought at peak 2022 prices may never break even.
No.
Oh, it's coming.
Toronto and Vancouver real estate is not expensive. It's just globally priced. Your income is the problem.
No. It's expensive.
No, it's expensive as shit.
Final one. The government should pay seniors to downsize or get out of the way.
No.
No.
Oh, wait. The seniors get out of the way or the government get out of the way? Hang on.
Second part. Yeah. Second part.
Yeah, it was a bit
Get out of the
confusing.
way.
I think they meant government get out of the way. Either pay the seniors or get out of the way. And just do nothing.
Don't pay the
Don't
seniors to
pay
get out of the
seniors.
way. But yes, government get out of the way.
Yes, exactly.
All right. That was fun. Adam, I appreciate you doing this. That was great. That was great. There was a bunch of
So
stuff
much
we
for
didn't even
real
cover.
estate, this podcast. We did like
Well,
motivation here. We did pull yourself up by your bootstraps. We did Bitcoin. Talked about TikTok for a second.
that was fun. We went a little bit off our normal path, but that was awesome. Adam, any final words of wisdom for our audience?
Honestly, just would love to send people down the rabbit hole that I've been down on this, because school doesn't teach you jack shit about this kind of thing. So check out a couple of books if anybody's really nerdy and wants to do the homework. Broken Money by Lynn Alden, The Price of Tomorrow by Jeff Booth. Two really great ones. And check out WTF Happened in 1971.
And also, let us know in the comments, do you want to see the video of Steve getting his ass handed to him in his first official fight?
Also read Values by Mark Carney.
Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching on YouTube. We will see you next week. Bye.
People should read the book, man. Like, it's